Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we'll build one complete REST API using Spring Webflux. So using Spring Webflux, we are creating Reactive REST API. So why we need to build Reactive Stream API and what are the advantages we'll get from this? What is the difference between REST API and Reactive Stream REST API? So if you want to know all these things, so I have already uploaded 2 videos in my channel. Just you can go through those videos once. You see here, so already I have uploaded few videos. Why reactive programming, what are the advantages we'll get from this, and what are the specification. If you want to know all these things, just you can go through these videos. So today's video is all about to create Spring Boot reactive REST API. So to create this one, first we need to install Postgres database in our system. So already I have installed in my system. So if you want to know how to install PostgreSQL in your system, I will provide you installation link in the description. You can go through that. So coming to this video, so here I am creating this reactive REST API based on one use case. So for example, so here I am creating one student microservices, and these services will do some of the CRUD operations like save student, save all student, find student by id, find all students, delete student by id, delete all students. So these are the operations I am going to perform as per this student microservices. So here our client is Postman. So all these operations will perform through Postman, and this data will store into the database. So here database I am using PostgreSQL database. Make sure first you need to install PostgreSQL database in your system. So first we'll create the Spring Boot application from the Spring Initializer. So for that one, we need to go to start.spring.io and select this Maven application, and here we can give that group ID, artifact ID. So I'm giving like here reactive, and artifact name is Spring Reactive, and version I'm using 17, and dependencies we need to use Spring Reactive Web. It is not like Spring Web, it is Spring Reactive Web you need to use. Okay, so after that we need to use PostgreSQL driver. Okay, so also we can add Lombok. So after adding these dependencies, you click on the generate project, it will download in your system. Okay, once it is done, just you can import this project into your IntelliJ ID. Okay, so before that one, you need to install PostgreSQL database. So already I have installed in my system. So we'll get pg admin along with the PostgreSQL database. So by using pg admin, we are able to see the tables. Okay, so in here in the PostgreSQL database, I have created one database like reactive underscore student underscore db. So inside I created one table inside the schema. After that is public. There I am created one table. One table is student table. Okay, so this is the query I am using to creating the student. Okay, so now our task is we need to insert data into the student table using our student service. Okay, so come to our REST services. So this is our microservice. So if you see this code, first we'll go through the pom.xml file. So if you see, so Webflux, here is the dependencies. When we are adding to that Spring Boot reactive web, it will come Spring Boot starter Webflux. Okay, and also it will come like when you are adding PostgreSQL R2 DBC, and here one more dependency like Spring Data R2 DBC. reactive programming purpose, we need to use this library for JPA. Okay, and also we need one extra library file DB. If you want, you can use. This is not a mandatory flyaway. Okay, so another one I have used Lombok. So these are the libraries I am using in the pom.xml file. Okay, so after that, if you come to that student controller, so what I am performing from the student controller, if you see here, so here is the REST API using annotation request mapping, annotation REST controller. This is the slash students endpoint. So from the student, I have created one post mapping like save student. If you observe this code, so here I am using mono. So why I am using mono? So here I am inserting only single student, only one student I am inserting. So in this case, mono is suitable for that one. Okay, so if you don't know how to check, we need to go with mono or we need to go with flex. So in this case, related to mono and flex, already I uploaded videos in my channel. You can just go through that, what is mono and what is flex. I explained there clearly. Okay, so here I am inserting only one item. I'm dealing with only one item, only one student. So in this case, I'm going with mono. So if you see, this is the service and I'm created one method like saves single student. If you go to this one, so this is the service class. So inside the service, I'm creating the student repository. Okay, so what kind of repository we need to create for the reactive programming? So if you see my repository, so it is extend reactive code repository. So in the normal REST API, we are using JPA CRUD repository or JPA CRUD repository. But while coming to the reactive programming, you need to extend reactive CRUD repository. So if you go inside that, again it is extending repository. So if you see, there are a multiple method inside that. One is for save. It will accept in one item as input and it will return the mono. Okay, if you see this method, what it will do, so this method will take only one zero or one item as an input and it will send to the operator, and after that it will send to that subscriber. Okay, and once it is completed, then it will send to that event like completion event. If it is failed, then it will send to that error event. So if you observe our controller class also here, so while saving the student, if this request is processed successfully, it will check do on success and it will write this log into our logs like successfully saved student. Okay, if it is any issue while occurred at the time of processing data, then it will mono will return to the event like saying on error event. So in that case, it will handle from here error saving to the student. Okay, so if you see the service class one more time, I'm just performing the save operation. So from the save operation, it will it will take only one item and it will process. Okay, so for that reason, single student, we can use the controller. From the controller, we can use mono. Okay, so come to the controller one more time. So this is for save student one item. So if you see the batch is nothing but, so I'm want to store multiple students at a time. So in this case, so usually in the REST API, normal REST API, we will pass list of student. But if you observe here in the annotation request body, I am passing flux of student. What is the use of flux? You want to know more about this one, you can check it out my previous videos. But flux is nothing but, if you want to deal with multiple items, then we need to go with the flux. Okay, so here I am creating the flux object with the students. If you observe this flux one, so here see, this will take the multiple items and it will process one after one another item process, and it will send to the destination is nothing but subscriber. So if it is process data process is completing, it will return to that complete on complete event, it will return. If anything is happened in between while processing the data, it will send on error event. Okay, so same here also, incomplete, whenever get this incomplete event, will send like successfully saved all the student. If we'll get on error, again we are handling that exception. Okay, if you go with save all students, so here if you see this repository, so repository is flux we are using. So whenever putting the cursor on that flux, you are able to see the API description also, what is the use of that method, everything it will show. Okay, this is all about save all student. So after save all student, I have created one more, find the student by ID. So here in this case I am passing one integer value to check that particular student is exist on the database or not. If already exists, then it will return again unsuccess, and it will return that particular student object. If you see here also same, only single item I am using, so that is the reason I am returning as a mono. So if it is returning multiple students, then instead of mono we need to use the flux. Okay, just remember, if you want to deal with single item, you need to go with mono. If you want to deal with multiple items, then you need to go with the flex. I hope you are clear. So there is a one more API I am using, find all students. So this is returning list of students. Okay, again this is flex. If it is item is successfully data transformation is done, it will return on complete. If any error, it will return on error event. Same I am handling here, but only one thing, it will return the list of items, means list of students. So that is the reason I'm handling that response using Flux. Normal REST API, we need to use the list of items. You can use list interface. Okay. So after that one, we are using delete. Delete also single item. So I'm using mono. If you are using the multiple deletes, I'm not returning anything. So mono is either one item or zero. In this case, we need to go with the mono. So here I'm not returning anything. So just I'm mention that return type as byte. Okay. So just you need to go to this code once, you'll get the better idea. You need to remember why do on success, why do on error. So here I am handling those errors. That is the reason I mentioned handling here in the controller level. So in the service layer also I'm handling those things. If you see, these are all things I'm handling. So like this, we need to build your own service using the Spring Boot Reactive API. So here we are using. So if you want to know more about this one, you can check out my previous videos also, or if you want, I'll go through it once quickly. If you see this project Reactor, so this is the project Reactor we are using in the Spring Boot Reactive API implementation. So what is the use of this? This Reactor is a fourth generation reactive library based on the reactive stream specification for building non-blocking application on the JVM. We are using this library to build non-blocking application on this JVM. Okay, so if you see the what are the libraries available, you can just go through this documentation. So in the documentation, if you see Reactor core, Reactor test, Reactor extra, Reactor native. So in this application, we are using Reactor native. Okay, so this is like one kind of server. So in the normal REST API, we are deploying this server in inside normal REST API while working with Spring Boot. We are using Tomcat, but here we are using Reactor native. We'll see this one in the example. Okay, and there is a Reactor adapter also on Kafka. So there are multiple libraries. So you can just go through this documentation. You will get better understanding about the what is the project Reactor, and how to use these libraries while creating the Spring Boot Reactive REST APIs. And if you go with this code again back, so now we'll see. So I explained you controller, repository, and here is the entity. What I am using in the entity: student, student ID, first name, last name, age. Okay, this is the thing I am using in the entity class. So I am mentioning the table as students. So here I am using the PostgreSQL database. If you see, here is the database configurations I'm added. So I'm created one reactive student DB. This is the database. Inside the database, I have a table like students. Okay, so this is my username and this is my password. So post number, it will run 5432. Okay, so if you want all this configuration details, my Medium page link in the description, you can get this code also. Okay, now we'll start our application once. So go to the Spring Reactive application, and you can start from here, or you can start from here also. There are multiple ways are there to start the Reactive or Spring Boot application using the IntelliJ IDE. So I'm running from here. So once you start, you can see the logs here. So in the normal Spring Boot application, we'll use Tomcat server. Active, it will use native. So this is the native library. So reactive native will use as per this reactive application deployment. If you see this one, so native started. So this is the native started and port 9898. Okay. So normally in this log we are able to see Tomcat server started on this port number in the normal REST APIs. You can just observe this thing. Okay. So now we need to call these APIs. If you go again back to the our diagram, so first API is save student. We'll try with the save student from the Postman and see how this data will inserted into the database. Okay. So come to the Postman and we'll use this save student. So in the save student, I will use first name and last name is J and I entered age is 20 as it is. If you see, these are the request for that one, and if you see that API, so this is the student controller and API is student. After that I'm using post mapping. In the post mapping there is no other API related configuration, only students are there. When you hit this slash students, it will automatically call this post mapping. We need to select mapping as a post mapping from the Postman. When you're selecting the post mapping and student, when you hit this API, see now ID is generated 7. This is the first name and last name. You can just go through the database and perform select star from students and you see ID is 7. This is the latest entry. It is inserted into the database. Okay. So and after this is save student, and next our API is save all students. So in this case we need to send multiple student items as a input. For example, if you want to do that one, so if you see this is also post mapping. Here we need to use slash batch. Okay. Come to the Postman. So just you can duplicate this post API and instead of save students we'll use save all student. We'll rename that, and instead of student we'll pass multiple student items. Okay. So for example I inserted as 3 elements. These are the 3 elements I inserted, and quickly we'll give the name is test student1, student1, last name is I mentioned like same, and student2, and another one first name is student3. These are the 3 students. So here we need to use after students, what is the API slash batch we need to use. Okay. So after student slash batch, this is the batch, means multiple student items we are trying to inserting into the database. Now it is, see, response is 200, ID is 8, 9 and 10. If you go with the database and we'll try to execute this select operation one more time. Now if you see, now 3 students are inserted. Okay. So like this you can do the multiple students to insert. Okay. This is save all student. Now you can go with find student by ID. So for example, if you see there are multiple student, you can see the student ID is 7. So in this case you need to go with this get all students. First we'll see get all students, what it will return. When you see the get all student, it will give all the list of student. Okay. Now we can duplicate this API and we'll rename to get student, only one student. Okay. So as per this argument we need to pass student ID. I am passing student ID is 7. When you hit this one, so it will return only one student ID. Okay. This is another way to identify the API, identify the student based on the ID. This is for find by student, this is the find all student. Now delete. So delete items, I'll perform only one ID now. So if you go to the Postman and go to the delete, and the delete I'll give you the ID as 7. So if you are using the ID 7, it will delete the student ID which is having 7. So if you see student with ID 7 is deleted, we'll come to the database and we can trigger this one. So select start from student, you can execute this query. Now student ID 7 is not there. Okay. Like that you can delete the student ID. One student you can delete from the Postman. If you want to delete bulk student, then you can go with another API that is for delete all students. Here there is no argument, directly you can call to that delete operation. So how to create that one? Just you can duplicate this API, and after that you can rename delete all. Then so you can use only the student. If you execute this one, it will delete all the students. So this is for delete operation. So you can use the students, so it will delete all the data from the database. Okay, so I didn't try this API delete one. You can try from your side. Okay, these are all the APIs I created as for this Spring Boot Reactive REST API. So we are using Mono and Flex most of the time, and also there are multiple methods also available in the Mono and Flex API. You can just go to that API also. If you come to the Mono, if you see there are so many methods is available, you can go through that each and every method, what is the use of those methods. So you'll get better understanding and better idea also how to use this Spring Boot Reactive REST API. So I'll give you this Git repository link also in the description. You can take that code and you can try from your side in your system. So make sure we need to add the properties file as per your database, PostgreSQL database. You need to add those properties. So this is all about creating Spring Boot Reactive REST API. So if you see this our use case, so we performed all these operations. This data will stored into the database. If this video is helpful for you, please like, share and subscribe my channel.